What's up, hip hoppers? Welcome in to Rap Juice Radio episode number 2. Today, this episode is going to be called Record Label Reputation. Why? Well, we got Pooh Shiesty and Gucci Mane drama that went viral today. All right. We're just going to get into it and start off by playing the video that went viral, and then we'll have a conversation and explanation of what went down.
Let them know you Let them know you dropping me. I drop you. No, say it. Who should I drop in 1017? Shout out to real nigga. Ain't never did no police shit or none of that, bro. Tell them what's going on. Bro, we just did that. It's done. What you do? You drop. You said you want to be dropped. You drop. Sign the paper. It's done.
Okay. Well, if you're unfamiliar with that situation, there's definitely a lack of context there. Let me fill you in. So there's an ongoing, drama between rapper Pooh Shiesty and, rapper slash manager in this situation, Gucci Mane. And let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen again and debrief you guys. Okay. So if you do not know who Pooh Shiesty is, let me introduce him for you. Let me go into full screen here. Okay. Pooh Shiesty. This guy here is an American rapper. His stage name was given to him by his late brother, who adapted his childhood nickname, Mr. Pooh, with the vernacular slang term Shiesty, which he felt was referential of his lifestyle. In 2020, he was signed to fellow Southern rapper Gucci Mane's 1017 Records, an imprint of Atlantic Records. This deal was reported to have been $10 million, where he rose to prominence following his collaborations with the label's founder and fellow signees. His 2020 single, Back in Blood, featuring Lil Durk, peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100. That same year, he guest appeared on the remix of Spot 'em Got 'em single, Beatbox, which peaked at number 12 on the Hot 100 and remains his joint highest entry on the chart. In early 2021, Shiesty released his debut mixtape, Shiesty Season, which peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200. He was then sentenced to 5 years in prison on firearms conspiracy charges in June 2021, but was released early in late 2025. His 2025 comeback single, FDO, First Day Out, peaked at number 12 on the Hot 100 and became his other highest charting song as a lead artist, tying Beatbox 2. Following an April 2026 break-in at Gucci Mane's house, Shiesty, along with 8 others, were arrested by the FBI and charged with federal conspiracy to commit kidnapping and robbery. So that last part being the most important, that video that we just watched in the beginning of this show was footage from that kidnapping and robbery at Gucci Mane's house in April this year. Fantastic. All right. If you do not know who Gucci Mane is, well, I'll just call him, a hip hop legend. But just a brief introduction to him. Won't read the whole thing here. But Radrick Davis, known professionally as Gucci Mane, is an American rapper and music exec. He is credited along with fellow Atlanta-based rappers T.I. and Juicee with pioneering the hip-hop subgenre trap music for mainstream audiences during the 2000s. All right. Well, yeah, this is ghetto drama, but in honor of the show, we're going to try to find some education out of this. So let's get into it. So you know, he's gonna have to deal with these charges, and I'll help you guys update you guys along that process. What's the results of this? But for the time being, we're just gonna actually talk about record label reputation. All right. Record labels get a bad rep. Some of it justified, but I would say a vast majority of it is unfair and unjustifiable, in my opinion. And even though I hate that I'm about to do it, I'm about to defend, record labels' reputation, and show you guys that they're not as bad as the general consensus will make it seem. So, one last time, I'm going to share my screen and let's break it all down. All right. So, moving along here, we're going to talk about a record label advance, which is the premise of this whole beef and drama that Pooh Shiesty has against Gucci Mane. A record label advance is an upfront, non-returnable payment made to an artist against their future royalties, or basically the money that they make off of the music. It functions like a prepaid paycheck intended to fund living expenses, marketing, or recording costs. The label recoups this money by keeping the artist's royalties until the balance is fully repaid. Okay, key mechanics of an advance. It's not free money. That's the biggest misconception. It is not free money. An advance is a prepayment on your royalties. You will not receive any additional royalties from your releases until the label has completely recouped the advance amount. Next, you don't usually owe it back. If your project flops and does not generate enough sales to pay back the label, you generally do not have to repay the balance out of your own pocket. The label simply absorbs the loss, though you will remain unrecouped, and the balance may carry over to future projects. Third, not just for you. Advances frequently have to cover specific expenses outlined in your contract. Common deducted costs include studio time, mixing and mastering, engineers, producer fees, and music video budgets. Lastly, recoupable versus non-recoupable. Aside from the advance, labels will often cover marketing, tour support, and manufacturing, which are also often recoupable expenses that eat into your future earnings. All right. So I just laid that out here. Pretty much the premise of um, a record label contract with a recording artist. It's basically the vast majority of it is the advance, which is pretty much, an account that the record label gives the artist upfront, and it's pretty much, a bank account for the artist to a credit account for the artist to use at their creative expenses to, advance their music career, right? And scrolling back up here, just going to highlight the most important part of this particular record label dispute, which is the advance amount. All right, where is it? I did see it here. Here we go. In 2020, going back to Pooh Shiesty, he was signed to fellow Southern rapper Gucci Mane's 1017 Records, an imprint of Atlantic Records. This deal was reported to have been $10 million. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the problem. Okay. I'm gonna just start it off by saying that is too much money for an advance. It's putting Pooh Shiesty in a vulnerable situation where he might end up, you know, in some hardship, stuck between a rock and a hard place on how he's going to get, even on that contract. Um, Make sure the record label gets their 10 million recouped. Um, and then he has to find a way to, you know, take care of himself on top of that. And, that is the problem that put himself in the situation where he's desperately trying to get out of this record label contract with Gucci Mane. And now he's done, put himself in a legal situation, which doesn't make it any better. So record labels pretty much give artists the opportunity to, grow. Any business, the first most important part of any business growing is capital, right? Money, funding. And the problem is artists these days, they get the advance, and for various reasons, whether their music's not good enough to recoup, or they blow the money by being irresponsible with their business expenses, they end up in a situation where they can't not only pay get the label to recoup properly and continue good business, but they spent all the money and they can't take care of themselves financially, right? And we've seen this time and time again in music, the whole music industry, but in particular as well the hip hop industry, where artists come out and pretty much try to paint the record label as the villain, right? Um, you know, Most recent situation I could think of was Meg Thee Stallion with her um, first record label contract, and pretty much uh, fought her way out of it, and she ended up getting released or whatnot, and then went over to Rock Nation. But I would argue that record label she was originally signed to got the short end of the stick, right? They were the first, label that believed in her, put capital behind her, right? To help her, advance her career, expand her fan base, right? And become rich and famous beyond her wildest dreams, right? Another situation, the Migos with QC the label. Another situation where, a lot of bickering and, painting the record label out as villains, um, saying that they did them wrong, right? They want out the contract immediately, going on social networks, going on press runs, and you know, me being someone who's dealt, with this music industry, you know, since a teenager, I just always look at it as ludicrous, and it's kind of, you know, people who are trying to find the easy way out, not understanding what they got themselves into. And that's the end result. We get the end result here with Pooh Shiesty pretty much going to Gucci Mane's house, holding him at gunpoint, and demanding that he releases him from 1017, Gucci Mane's record label. The responsible thing to do would clearly be to, earn your way out of the contract fair and square. Gucci Mane gave you $10 million, right? The record label gave you $10 million. That's more than enough money to, do what you need to do as a music artist. There should be absolutely no excuses. It's enough to, fund um, multiple albums with full layouts of, music videos, vlogs, traveling expenses, whether you need to go for interviews, on a press run, podcasts, right? It's enough to, get your merch shop up, book a tour, get, book a manager, book an assistant, a whole team, street team, you know, $10 million, advance for your first contract is an extremely large amount of money. Um, when you compare it historically to what your typical rookie contract usually is, right? So artists these days are spoiled if you get into that situation where, you have large demand. He clearly had demand to his credit. It's not like record labels are just doling out $10 million contracts to every artist that they're interested in. Clearly had some street demand, was buzzing in the streets, and good for him. But once you get that, advance, now whatever you had going for you has turned into a much more serious, much bigger business. And you need to maintain that integrity. You need to, uh, get creative, stay lucrative, right? Make sure your books are covered. Make sure your management and your lawyers are solid. They're not, misleading you, right? Shaving any, funds off top, stealing any money behind your back. You need to make sure everything's in check, right? You now have a $10 million business that you need to operate and manage. And the problem is, music artists are not naturally businessmen, they are artists, right? Creativity is their forte, not finance. But, in this, industry that, we're currently in, artists, we've got to do better. We've got to, have different hats in our closet. You got to take off your creative hat, your artist hat. You got to put on your business hat, your management hat, your ownership hat, right? And, just want to spend some time today educating, you guys, just the music fans, but more so even the music artists who are wondering, why would Pooh Shiesty even do something as silly, as reckless as this, putting yourself in a worse situation? Well, I could tell you without looking into his books and whatnot. Obviously, I'm on the outside looking in, but we've seen this time and time again. His music was just not recouping, enough. He wasn't in the black, he wasn't in the green, right? Clearly, he's in the red, and the record label, I'm sure, was frustrated. Um, I'm sure he was frustrated, but the business is in the red, right? And the record label, until you are, out of the red, back in black, back in good standing, making money, making profits, the record label is recouping everything possible. So all of his streams, they're going, to 1017. He's not seeing any of that, right? So he had, his first day out record when he got out of prison. This man signed a deal and then ends up in prison. What was it, a year later? Yeah. Signed a deal in 2020. Yeah, check this out. Signed a deal in 2020. You know, was probably, actually doing pretty well here. 2020 single peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100. Great news. Sure, everybody's happy. You know, peaked at number 12 on a remix. And early 2021, debuts mixtape, Shiesty Season, peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200. Right after that, things were going well. Then sentenced to 5 years in prison on firearms conspiracy charges in June 2021. So from 2021 to 2025, what do you think the business was looking like? Right? The flagship product is locked up in prison. So, by the time he comes out, business is already pretty much non-existent. And, you know, saving grace, he has a 2025 comeback single, Street Music, we got the First Day Out record, you know, and peaks number 12 on Hot 100. But clearly, he's been in prison for 5 years. He's got a lot of bills, a lot of family expenses. I'm sure a lot of people are counting on him. And he's probably behind, financially. So even though he did find success with First Day Out, all of that money probably wasn't going to him. And, it's going to 1017 because they're trying to still recoup that 10 million. And, he's got a grown man, he's got things to take care of. And I'm sure he just was unable to do that. And comes to, a tipping point where he will try to get out of this record deal by any means necessary, even if it means committing crime. So April this year, he breaks in at Gucci Mane's house, arrested by the FBI, charged with federal conspiracy to commit kidnapping and robbery. There's a lot of allegations. Was it Gucci Mane? Is it real? Is he guilty? Well, today we get the footage. So clearly not looking good for him and his future. Personally wish him the best, but can't take the street out of a street dude. Now he's gonna have to deal with the repercussions. So just a good lesson and good education on why it's important to understand how record labels work if you're a music artist. Definitely suggest getting advance that actually fits your budget, makes sense, right? Probably 99% of artists don't need a $10 million advance. You could argue it's just going to set you up for failure, and it pretty much makes you a slave to the industry. So, get a record deal that makes sense, something that could forward your career. If you need financial backing, but always keep your expenses as low as possible. Just like if it was a real business, when it comes to recording, build your own studio, get those expenses out the way the first time. You don't have to deal with it again. Or make sure you have a affordable recording studio that you can go to. No need to go flash now that you have an advance to go up to, the biggest, most popular, most, legendary studio you could find. No need to do that. No need to go to the club to go shine out. No need to travel everywhere unless it's for business. If you're going to go do a show, go do an interview, right? Make sure you make yourself as valuable and as profitable as possible. So make sure you get your merch going, right? Make sure your management is on point. So you are, squeezing all the juice you can out of every opportunity. And, make sure you got a good lawyer who, can make sure that your contracts and your business is in order and everything is fair. You know, what could Pooh Shiesty have done differently? If you make a bad business decision, gotta, deal with it, play the long game, adjust. You know, you're a popping artist, you just got to keep going. Use what you got to your advantage. You're making Billboard charts with your songs. You just got to keep making more. It's a lot of legendary artists throughout the years who have been stuck in similar situations, and you got to just keep pumping music out, right? You got nobody to blame but yourself. What are you gonna do? Do something illegal? Do something stupid? Give up? Retire? Or are you gonna, you know, put your big boy pants on and push through it, right? Face the adversity. Yep. So just gonna wrap this up with tips for negotiating in advance. Find yourself in that situation, understand the math, ensure you have a clear picture of how many streams or physical sales you need to pay the advance off. Consider staggered payments. Large sums can be tempting but come with massive tax obligations. Consider requesting a lump sum on signature and the rest incrementally over the duration of the contract to maintain a steady, livable income. Consult an attorney. Always have a specialized entertainment lawyer review your contract. They can negotiate to remove cross collateralization, where the label recovers losses on one album from the royalties of another, and ensure your advance is high enough to live on while you create. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for now. The saga will continue, I'm sure. But, be safe, take care of yourself, stay creative. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. You think he's going to be guilty? You think he's going to get out? You guys let me know. I'm going to go catch this World Cup match. Team USA is about to play. Hip hoppers, y'all subscribe for the culture. I'm Canvas Murakami, editor-in-chief of Rap Juice. See ya. Peace.